Hey y'all, happy hump day. It's Jen from You So Much. It's a happy Wednesday evening and the days are getting longer and longer, guys. I know it's hard to tell because it's still pretty dark outside here on the West Coast. I'm sure on the East Coast it's been dark for a little while and wherever else you are in the world. But anyway, I'm rambling. I am so glad to be here and drinking some wine. I'm getting started a little bit late tonight. I had a project that I had to finish. So that's the beauty of live YouTubing is you can just hop on whenever you feel like it. And it's now officially wine time. I can officially drink some wine and enjoy my evening. So today, by the way, for those of you who've never joined me for a Wine with Wednesday, I basically usually pick kind of a random topic, tell stories about what's going on in my life, and then I invite you to share with me whatever I'm talking about, the topic of the day, and I'm drinking wine, and invite you to share wine with me, with wherever you are. So if you happen to be joining me live, please say hi in the chat box. We'd love to see you there. And tell me what you're drinking. It might not be wine. Maybe it's water, or maybe it's vodka, or maybe it's a cup of tea or whatever, right? So anyway, so today I have with me, let's see, I got to put my glasses on so I can really see this thing. It is a Perazzeta, which is a Sangiovese. Perazzeta is the brand. So this is what it looks like. And what is kind of significant is it has this little sticker on there, which signifies that it is a small winery. I forget now, what does it say again? It says, it's so tiny I can barely read it. Well, anyway, I pulled up the website so I can read some stuff for you about it. Basically, there's a gal who's local here in Portland, and she picks out wines from small vineyards in the Mediterranean, and then she puts this little sticker on there so you could indicate that she has like tested the wine and tasted it and she approves of it, so that when you go shopping locally, like at the Whole Foods is where we get this a lot. I think New Seasons and a lot of the local grocers carry these wines as well. If it has a little sticker on it, you know it's been approved by this gal who does this herself. So what a fun job, right? Travel around the Mediterranean, drink some wine and pick it out for us, right? But I'm glad she does it. So we know almost 100% of the time when we choose a bottle from these guys that it's going to be delish. So, anyway, let's see what it says about this one. It is, okay, it's literally too dark and this is way too small for me to read, which is funny because actually when I pulled up her website, I happened to notice that the font on her website is really, really small. Now, I'm someone who notices these things because I notice the words on a website because the words are really important to, and if you're going to make a website and you're going to put the words on your website, obviously you're trying to communicate something to your clients, to your customers, to maybe someone who's interested in buying something from you. And if it's really small and you're spending all this time creating this website, but they can barely read it, you're kind of defeating the purpose of your website in the first place. So like one of my biggest pet peeves for websites is when they don't have a font that's big enough. Make the font so big that an old person doesn't have to put their glasses on. Maybe not quite that big, but pretty close. You don't want it to be so tiny. All right, enough of my little rant there. So let's get pouring on this glass of wine because it looks really delish. Okay, look at that. Beautiful color. Nice darker color. So I tend to like a lighter color. It's just my style. I tend to like the lighter, fruitier candy wines, as I've mentioned before. But every once in a while, I like this style too, so we'll see. And usually, actually, any wine from the Mediterranean, I tend to like as well. So if it is an Oregon Pinot Noir, you know I'm going to love it, like 90% of the time. And if it's a Spanish wine, or it's a wine from Chile, or it is an Italian wine, I'm like pretty much going to like it. The French wines, not always. I'm not always, but there's something about the style. They don't always, they tend to use steel barrels as well. So they're not going to be, overloading with some flavor from the wood. So anyway, I'm again rambling on, but that's okay. Because then, you get to know my preferences. And if you ever feel like buying me a bottle of wine, you know what I like. Okay, let's see. Really, really good. I really enjoy this. I had to properly taste it for y'all. So excuse the pause in the video while I did that. That is delish. So let me pull up what she says on her website. I would love to share with you guys. so that if you see this, and again, she's from Portland, but I don't know if this is a Portland exclusive thing that happens. So maybe this will tell us. So let's see. Okay, so it's called, the website that, by the way, it's called enjoysmall.com. And I think the sticker says Small Vineyards. So it's like a Small Vineyards approved thing. So it says about Small Vineyards. At Small Vineyards, we search every corner of the Mediterranean for the best small production wines made today. Why? Because we believe, after tasting thousands of wines, that the very best consistently comes from small estates. God, this is so small. I can barely read this with my glasses on. If you think about it, it's a lot easier to make a great meal for 5 people than for 500. And winemaking is no different. That's why we tell our clients upfront with our Small Vineyards gold seal on the bottle, there you go, that you're holding a small batch wine from a family-owned estate and that you'll be proud to serve. In working with the small family-owned estates, we're not just ensuring that the wine is fantastic, but we're working to protect a way of life that has been preserved through the generations. And then they say, why small? Every grape is actually picked by hand, and only the ripest grapes get made into wine. And our estates use sustainable growing methods to make earth-friendly wines year in and year out. And then number 3, by importing wines from family vineyards, we're helping to protect unique grape varietals, winemaking styles, and preserve a special way of life. Love that. So they put the Small Vineyards Gold Discovery seal on the front of every bottle that they import. And this helps to identify quality wines on the shelf. So totally agree. It doesn't say, let's see. Okay, here we go. I found a little set thing that says where you can find our wines. So they do have it in more than one state. Although there's like a pull down menu that's not working. So, well, here in Oregon anyway, you can find it at the local Whole Foods. I know you can find it at, let's see, where else? You can find it at the New Seasons. You can also find it at the Market of Choice, which is sort of a cool grocery store. I may have talked about it on my channel before. It actually started in Eugene, and they have actually begun expanding up here a little bit. And it's kind of got, what I love about Market of Choice, okay, random topic for a moment, is it's kind of like has all the stuff that you might only find at New Seasons, more New Seasons than Whole Foods. So they have a lot of organic stuff, but they also carry like the regular stuff. So like New Seasons, for example, they don't have my favorite corn chips, which I've talked about before on this channel, my Tostitos organic yellow corn chips. You can't find that at New Seasons because it doesn't like qualify into their special regulations or whatever. And same thing with Whole Foods. Whole Foods doesn't carry them at all. But you can find that at Market of Choice. You can find some of the conventional stuff at Market of Choice as well as a lot of the organic stuff. So that's one of the things I really like about that store. It's just that they're not everywhere. They're like, you know, like there's one now sort of in the southeast area downtown. They've got one in Westland, so way out in Westland. And I'm trying to remember where else. There's like 3 or 4, Burlingame. There's only a few locations here in the Portland area, like the whole Portland area. Whereas in Eugene, there's like 4 or 5 of them, if not more, like right in the downtown area of Eugene, Springfield. So anyway, so for those of you who can find the Small Vineyard Gold Seal, I highly recommend their wines. They're delish, and this is no exception. So I thought it would be fun today. Unfortunately, there's nobody here in the live chat. So it's so much more fun when people are live and I can just talk to you right here on the chat and get your input and your ideas and your thoughts. Because today I thought it'd be really fun to talk about the difference between warriors and gladiators. So this is kind of a random subject, I know, but let me tell you why I came across this subject. So I was recently talking to my trainer, Kathy, and she was talking about how one of her favorite movies that she can watch over and over again is The Gladiator or Gladiators or something like that. I know I haven't even seen it. And she's like, oh my God, I can watch it over and over and over again. She just loves this movie. So I know I'm terrible. Probably like all of you have probably seen this movie and I haven't seen it. So I have not seen it. And I was talking about how I really want to see it. And she's like, you know, it's really interesting. She said that, you know, gladiators are known as like these, you know, amazing warriors, but really a lot of them were originally slaves. And I was like, what? And she said, yeah, they were like, you know, in the arena and they were slaves and they had to fight each other to the death. She's like, or I think, she thought that's what she thought. So I thought, well, that's really interesting. So I decided to look it up online, and then what the, according to, the Google and the wiki, the difference between a warrior and a gladiator is basically that a warrior is actually somebody who's actively in some kind of a battle or war. So technically you could maybe be a warrior, but not really, because if you're just a warrior that's not really in battle at the time, then you're not really a warrior, I guess, sort of. And then a gladiator is someone who is kind of, I think, well, what they said online was that they were a slave. So, but not always. Sometimes they would do it just for entertainment. And so I thought it'd be really fun to pull up. I found a really cool link that talked about the difference, or 10 things. It was just from the History Channel, 10 things you may not know about Roman gladiators. So obviously originally they were in Rome. And so, okay, so here's what it says on this particular website that I found, which is really cool. I'll link it in the description for those of you who are watching this on the replay and want to look this up. So it says, beloved by the masses and sometimes scorned by the elites, Roman gladiators were the working class heroes of antiquity. For more than 650 years, people flocked to arenas across the empire to watch these armed and highly trained warriors engage in a blood-soaked spectacle, equal parts sport, theater, and cold-blooded murder. So really interesting stuff. So this is one of the things that they say, is that they weren't always slaves. So they weren't all that way. In fact, they were lured by the thrill of the battle, and they were often fighting each other for money, or like just prized esteem, basically. And that sometimes they were even freelance. They actually, okay, so this is what it's saying. Freelance warriors were often desperate men or ex-soldiers skilled in fighting, and they just wanted to demonstrate their warrior pedigree. So it's kind of a way for them to show off how awesome they are at, at fighting, I guess. So this is interesting because, again, that difference between warrior and gladiator, it's actually saying that they're warriors if they are gladiators. But that's not according to Wiki and Google. There's a big difference. So and again, if you are live and you know anything about this, I would love it if you chimed in and told me, gave me some info. It'd be great. I'm just checking the live chat box right now. I'm laughing because I'm the only one who's commented right now on my chat box, which basically says, welcome, I'm about to get drunk. And of course I was kidding, but of course there will be wine. So please, if you are live, say hello. And if you are watching this on the replay and you know anything about gladiators and warriors, I'd love to hear from you. By the way, the other reason why I forgot before I got into these facts, the other reason why I was really fascinated by this is because as soon as I was talking to Kathy about this, I had this realization that one of the people that I've been taking a class from online is Shonda Rhimes. And she's teaches this class on Masterclass on how to write for a TV series. And I immediately thought of Shonda because in this class she talks about this, and of course I remembered it because I really love this TV show. She is the writer for the show Scandal. So in the original pilot episode of Scandal, they refer to, so Olivia Pope is the main character for those of you who haven't seen it. And she's kind of like this person who kind of is like the problem solver in Washington, D.C. So like if people have a media problem or they just murdered somebody or whatever, like she's kind of like that PR person that kind of takes care of it for you. So she doesn't just do the PR coverage. She like takes care of it. So, so she has connections and she, is kind of ruthless to get things done. And so, but she also is sort of known as the good guy. She's like the person that they call, she wears the white hat. And so the original pilot episode shows this like young gal who's interviewing for a position working with Olivia. And they describe her job as basically being a gladiator in a white suit. Or maybe it's just gladiator in a suit. I think that's what it is, just gladiator in a suit, which I think is really interesting because when I heard that gladiators, I mean, I just never really realized this. I didn't really think about it, that they were actually slaves. Makes sense to me that they were slaves, that maybe they were fighting to the death, not really under their own, own will, right? They might've been forced to fight for their life. I just never really thought about it. Because I didn't think about it in like the literal terms of way back in Roman times, right? I was just thinking about how gladiators are kind of like warriors. And in that sort of description of that, you know, person that works with Olivia Pope on Scandal, that seems so honorable to be a gladiator in a suit, right? And to fight for the people. And that's kind of like essentially what it is. But at the same time, if we think of some of the history behind being a gladiator, some of it's not so glamorous. And so I just thought that this whole thing was just kind of interesting to me. So let's see here. See what it says. So this is another thing that's, I think, is really fascinating. So one of the other facts that's interesting is gladiator bouts were originally part of a funeral ceremony. So it was kind of one of those things that they would do as this sort of eulogy for someone who just died. It was like a big, like, entertaining thing that they would do. They do these, they call it state-funded games as a way of currying favor with the masses. So apparently, obviously, I'm sure it's some sort of like symbol of human sacrifice, right? So basically, okay, this is what it says. When distinguished aristocrats died, their families would hold graveside bouts between slaves or condemned prisoners as a kind of a eulogy for the virtues the person had demonstrated in life. So yeah, so basically they make their slaves fight each other at a funeral. Okay. And then, so basically, someone dies who's an aristocrat. All right, one of you slaves got to die too. I mean, really? It's kind of weird in a way, if you think about it. So I don't know. People just didn't always necessarily think like they do now, apparently. I know, it's crazy. Times have changed. So the other thing that they say here on this really cool link that I will put in the description for y'all is that they didn't always fight to the death. So a lot of times in the movies and television shows, they show gladiators in the ring fighting each other and someone always has to die, but they're actually saying that a lot of times it was more about winning money or about winning prestige. And it says, in rare cases, both warriors were allowed to leave the arena with honor if they had put on an exciting show for the crowd. Now we're talking about a little bit more distinguished fighting going on here, right? And I think that's really interesting. And that the life of a gladiator was obviously brutal and short, and most only lived into their mid-20s. And let's see, historians have estimated that somewhere between 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 bouts left one of its participants dead. So fascinating stuff, people. Okay, wait, I'm just going to go back and make sure there's nobody in the chat box because I'm like have all these windows open. Okay, nope. No one is joining me for the chat today. I'm so bummed about this because I just know some of you guys out there have a little inside knowledge on gladiators versus warriors. And I would love to hear about it. So if you watch this in the replay, comment below and let me know. And in the meantime, I'm just going to keep drinking my wine and reading through my History Channel facts with you all and telling stories that might come to my mind. So this is interesting. The famous thumbs down gesture probably didn't mean death. So if a gladiator was seriously wounded or threw down his weapon in defeat, his fate was left in the hands of the spectators. But they're saying here that the thumbs down gesture may not, and a lot of paintings and films show that the thumbs down was when they wanted someone to be killed. But they're saying that may not be true. Some actually people think that the sign may have been a thumbs up, which kind of makes sense, right? Like, yeah, go ahead and kill him, right? Or they're saying something about a closed fist with 2 fingers extended. A thumbs down or even a waved handkerchief may have signaled mercy. So whatever gesture was used, it was typically accompanied by ear-piercing cries of either let him go or slay him. Wow. So slay had a whole new meaning back then, Beyonce. All right. So that's really interesting. I guess I never really knew much about the thumbs up thing or the thumbs down thing or whatever. I never really thought about that. I think in my head, whenever I've seen that, it's been cries from the crowd, like the vocal expression is kind of what comes more to my mind than some kind of a symbol. So, but that's really interesting because as a writer, it makes me think like maybe there are things that could indicate from a crowd standpoint, symbols in a certain place and time, right? Or a certain culture that could indicate the will of the people versus, the more civilized ways we do it today, I guess. But it's just interesting. But I mean, I guess you could argue which one is more civilized, right? So anyway, just as from a writing perspective, that makes me kind of want to look that up a little bit more and see how that might be applied in general, like, in a world that I might create in a book or a story. Okay, so let's see. It says they were organized into different classes and types. So the actual fighters themselves often had a specific like ranking, which makes sense to me, right? So it says of all the popular gladiator types, perhaps the most unusual was the Rotarius, who was armed with only a net and a trident. These warriors tried to ensnare their opponents in their net before moving in for the kill. But if they failed, they were left almost entirely defenseless. And there were some that obviously fought with a sword and shield, and there were some that were on a horseback, and some that battled from chariots, and some who wielded 2 swords at once. This is cool stuff. Like, this is like, okay, this is the stuff of storytelling, right? Like, all these different kinds of battles that happened on, in the arena. I was about to say on the field. I guess it's football in my mind, but it's really in the arena. So good stuff. All right, I'm just going to sit back for a minute and drink some wine. Interesting, because I do kind of feel like Washington is filled with a bunch of people who are trying to kill each other, right? So maybe gladiator in a suit is actually a really good description. Maybe Shonda like really did that intentionally. I wonder. It actually makes me really wonder, and want to reach out to her and ask. And by the way, if you are a writer and you love to learn more about writing, I mean, I'm like addicted to just pretty much anything about writing. I'm trying to learn more about writing because I write for my business, which is, yes, it's different than writing a typical like entertaining story or novel, fictional. However, a lot of the principles are the same, right? It's that storytelling that you're doing in copy. I'm basically working with my clients on their customer story, and they really have to understand their customer story and actually tell that story in their marketing in different ways. And so all the principles are the same. They really are the same, because in a story, most of the time the hero's trying to improve their life. And it's the same thing with my clients' customers. They're trying to improve their life, and they wouldn't buy a product or service if it wasn't. So it's just so much the same. And so I'm just addicted to looking. In fact, I'm addicted kind of to reading all this stuff about like how to be a better persuasive writer for my copy clients, and looking how to apply that to my fiction writing and vice versa. Like all the things I'm learning about writing a fictional story, novel, TV show. It's like, I think it's kind of learning all the things that all the people do for all these different platforms, and what are the commonalities and how can you apply from one to the other. It's good stuff. Good stuff. All right, guys, I'm going to look at the chat box one more time real quick. Okay. Before I go on to this other fact. So this is really interesting. They rarely fought against animals, which to me makes sense, right? But I don't know. We often see the bullfighter, right? I don't know if I've ever seen necessarily other things depicted. So this is saying they sometimes would fight with wild beasts. They would square off with deer and ostriches and lions and crocodiles and bears and even elephants. Animal hunts were typically the opening event at the games. And it's saying 9,000 animals were slain during a 100-day ceremony to mark the opening of the Colosseum. Oh my God. Wow, that's just terrible. Most animals were merely slaughtered for sport. Some of them were trained to do tricks and that kind of thing. Wow, this is just terrible. like, just reading this is making me sick. So I'm just going to move on without much more comment on that one. The next fact is really interesting. So women also fought as gladiators, which is awesome. And it says that, although it wasn't necessarily awesome that they were slaves and had to fight to the death, right? But there was no sexism going on, right? No sexism that you have to die. It doesn't matter if you're a male or female. You still might have to fight to the death. So they were regularly condemned to the arena along with their male counterparts. And a few citizens actually took up the sword of their own free will. So actually there are some female who do this for fun. I mean, I don't know if fun's really the right word, but you know what I'm saying. And it says that they may not have been taken seriously in the patriarchal Roman culture, but a few of them did seem to prove themselves in combat. So, and a marble relief dating to around the 2nd century AD depicts a bout between two women dubbed Amazon and Achilia. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Where it says it was an honorable draw. So that's really interesting. So, yeah, it's just kind of interesting. It doesn't surprise me. I feel like in history, a lot of women have been shown to be, you know, warriors and fighters. And so that's not like, I don't know, to me, it doesn't seem like a huge revelation, but at the same time, it's still a very interesting fact. It actually kind of reminds me, one of the clients I regularly write for is someone who recruits for, like I would say, construction workers and that kind of blue collar, dirty jobs kind of jobs, right? And one of the facts that I recently discovered was that women in that, and by the way, they're like, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a shortage of people who are going into that field. So people who are looking into going into construction or electricians, HVAC, all that kind of stuff, the skilled trade, as another way of putting it. So a lot of those kinds of people have been retiring. Those kinds of jobs have had people, like a huge influx of people retiring, whereas there's not a lot of people in the younger generations, like the millennials, are not going into that field as much as they used to, because there's a lot more people who are getting college education and looking into wearing suits. They want to be gladiators in a suit instead. And so, so there's a shortage of people who are in that industry. And so thus the incomes have gone up because the demand is higher. And so it's caught the attention of many people, because a lot of people who maybe thought to themselves, I don't want to be a carpenter, or I don't want to be an electrician, you know, I have to get a respectable job, have rethunk that and said, you know what, I could be a skilled artisan in my field, working with my hands rather than necessarily, you know, wearing a suit. And so actually I'm kind of interested in this personally, because for the book that I'm writing, all of the main characters in the book have special powers with their hands. And so one of the things I've sort of been doing a little research on is different trades where people use their hands predominantly. And so, as you can imagine, I'm looking into something like this for one of the characters in my book. And I discovered that women in this field get paid almost the same as men. There's not as much of a disparate in their income. For whatever reason. So really interesting. For a field that you would think maybe there might be more, there's less. So, women, go out there and get your hands dirty maybe if you feel like it, if you want to. Okay. I'm really going on tangents on this one. Not that I normally don't anyway, but usually it's because I'm telling stories based off of what someone might mention in the chat box, and now I'm just doing it on my own. So maybe it's me, not you. Okay, anyway, let's see. Some gladiators organized themselves into trade unions. Very interesting. So they would work it out so that if a warrior fell in battle, the groups would ensure that their comrade received a popular funeral. And if they had a wife and children, they would see that the family received money for their loss, et cetera, et cetera. That's really interesting. Sorry, I'm kind of moving around here because my leg is asleep, man. I was like sitting on it. It's kind of funky. You could probably, by the way, I forgot to say that my kitty is back there. You can probably see her, that blob on the couch. She's been taking a little nap the whole time. I meant to introduce her for those of you who haven't met my kitty, Adela, sleeping away. So this is saying that gladiators, another interesting fact is gladiators often became celebrities and sex symbols, which is for me. You know, they get a little fame for their notoriety, for their strength and their prowess, and then they become sort of popular. It says many women wore hairpins and other jewelry dipped in their gladiator blood, and some even mixed gladiator sweats, which was then considered an aphrodisiac. Creams and other cosmetics. Oh my God, that's really interesting. That would be kind of an interesting like marketing ploy for a current facial cream cosmetic provider to say, hey, we've got some gladiator sweat in our stuff. Gosh, now there's something that would make for a really great Fanta review. Oh my gosh, that would be really funny. But again, my mind is spinning here. The storyteller in me is thinking about how I can maybe use that in my book. I'm not sure, but obviously not the exact same thing, but the concept is really interesting. And it's also saying that children would play with gladiator action figures made of clay. So like the Barbie dolls of ancient times, ancient Roman times. That's just awesome. I love it. Or more like a Ken doll and not like a Barbie doll. So anyway, so that, like I said, that's from the History Channel. Really awesome stuff. I'll put it in the description of this video. And anyway, I'm really glad that if you happen to join me, excuse me as I adjust myself, get my leg all moving again. If you happen to join me, I appreciate you being here, even if it's, let me look real quick. I haven't even looked at the chat box in a while. So if you happen to say hi to me, I apologize. Oh, yay, Sherry's here. Hey, welcome, Sherry. I love it. She said she finally frosted Christmas cookies with the grandkids. What a mess. Oh my gosh, frosting cookies is the biggest disaster. I have to tell you what, just making cookies. One of the things I've started doing, Sherry, instead of frosting, it's a really fun thing to do. In fact, I'll put the link below too, is get some really good food coloring dye, like really good, like not like the stuff you buy at the grocery store. And I will take my batch of separated out into like 4 different sections, and I'll dye the dough. And then I get the kind where it's like a refrigerator cookie, so you can slice it, and then you can take the sections and you can like roll out a couple of them, and then like roll it up together, so like creates a swirl. So when you cut them, it creates this swirl. Or like you can put them into like little checkerboards, that kind of thing. Anyway, it's really pretty and cute. And then it's also not as much of a mess with the frosting because it's already got the color on it, so you don't have to frost it. You can just add sprinkles if you want to, but easier. But sometimes cookies with frosting is just really yummy. So I know what that's like. Let's see. And then she said that she's pouring Metropolitan Red Washington State Table Wine, release number 31, vintage 2015. Wow, Sherry, that sounds kind of awesome, I have to say. I'm curious, does it say what kind of wine? Because it's a table wine, I'm assuming it's a mix. Because it's release number 31, it's got to be a pretty yummy mix, right? Anyway, I'm sure it's got to be delish. So you missed me talking earlier about the wine that I'm drinking, which is a Sangiovese. And it's by the people who do that. Here, I'm just going to grab it real quick. It's by the people who do that Small Vineyards. I bet you can find them up in Washington. I bet they have them. Small Vineyards Gold Seal, which basically means it's a wine from the Mediterranean that's been picked out by this company that picks out these wines and like approves them and imports them and all that stuff. And Sherry says that she's also done the dyeing of the cookies. That's awesome. She's saying, try making cement footprints and handprints, stepping stones. You know what? I did that one time for my mom, I think on Mom's Day. Although I will say what we did is we gave my mom the kits for Mom's Day. And my mom helped us when we made the stepping stones. So it just made it, you know, so much easier to do. And then if it was a complete mess, she kind of knew why. And then she, you know, anyway, but that was a fun project. So fun. I think you said you did that a God, I can't remember when you said you did that. One of my videos, you were talking about how you were doing that. And that's such a nice gift for people. Maybe it was this year for Christmas you did that. Anyway, you don't know what kind of wine came from the Metropolitan Market. Okay, all good. I was just curious. It sounds delicious. Well, Sherry, I've been like gabbing on and on about Warriors versus Gladiators, and I finished all my stuff about it. So I think my time is up for the evening, but I'm so glad you were able to join me at the last minute and pour yourself a glass of wine. And so I wish you an awesome evening. And if those of you who happen to watch me on the replay, if you have any insights on Warriors versus Gladiators, please do share. If you just want to say hi, or if you just want to tell me about another awesome wine to try, I'm all ears, y'all. So thank you as always, and we'll see you again soon. I'm gonna have another video this week, actually, before my chocolate for breakfast. So stay tuned for that, and have a great night, you guys. Bye.